and welcome to another episode of our podcast, EPG Talks. I'm your host, Ana Niculicea, and today I'm joined by Dana Marekova, who is an environmental lawyer and campaigner, and also the coordinator of Climate Coalition Slovakia. Thank you so much, Dana, for accepting this invitation.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, so this is actually the second episode of our EPG Climate Governance podcast series. The first one was touched upon more on some general aspects of climate governance and core elements of what a climate framework law should contain. So for this one, we decided to deep dive into a particular case that is also interesting and relatable for Romania and its experience. So we decided to invite Dana, that's going to talk about the Slovakian case. It's also very interesting because next year is election time in Romania. We're going to hold 4 cycles of elections. It's going to be the EU Parliament. It's going to be the general elections for the Parliament, presidential, and even local elections. So a lot of things going on and a lot of change we foresee that's going to happen. Slovakia also held elections in September, and they had a change of government. And Slovakia is also one of the few countries in the Central Eastern European region that has currently a draft of a climate law into discussion from the previous government. So let's get started. Dana, can you tell us about the context of the bill, how it all began?
Yes, I will first refer to your mention of elections. It has to be noted, and it's relevant to also the current and previous context, that we just had national elections. We have a new government, but also just like Romania and other EU member states, we're heading for EU elections, which are going to be really important are important for the climate policies in general and the governance. So we are getting ready for that. That's a similar Slovakia and Romania path. And we also will have a presidential elections. So also something to look forward to. And we really need to, or would like to, as civil society, ascertain that that the climate law and other elements of the climate governance and ambitions and everything are an important topic in elections, and maybe we can talk about that, how to ascertain that as well. But diving a bit into a history and the context, the Slovak climate law, I believe it's more than 2 years already that this law kind of started its path, and it did start as the idea the Ministry of Environment, which was very encouraging. And at that time, Climate Coalition, which I represent, as well as other NGOs, had fairly open doors, so to speak, to that ministry. And basically from very first moments, there was certain interaction. There was even an idea that ministry came up with that we will jointly organize some kind of participatory process, which, looking back, would have been an amazing instrument to really ascertain that the climate law is widely accepted. But that was the idea at the very beginning, 2 years ago, as I said. Since then, Ministry of Environment basically in the first phases had few online meetings, because COVID times, online meetings of so-called expert group, where luckily NGOs were present, but also representatives of different government institutions and different businesses. But sadly, I have to say that those online meetings were very few, not sufficient, and very much kind of a one-way communication. So ministry was saying something to us, and we were listening and barely able to ask questions.
Okay,
However,
so it was not, so sorry for jumping in. It was not the participatory forum that you were expecting.
It
from
was
the
not at
start.
all, or what they were actually proposing. Nevertheless, since we were really persistent as Climate Coalition and other partner NGOs, you know, we were knocking on the doors of Ministry of Environment. If they didn't open them, we did use the window and other paths to actually really use those 2 years to come up with kind of our priorities and put them forth. Our priorities, what the strong climate law needs to have, and even kind of we worked on sections of the climate law.
That's amazing. Yeah, because there's other countries in Central Eastern Europe that have climate laws, like Hungary or Bulgaria or Croatia, but just naming it a climate law doesn't make it a climate law, since you don't tap into all of the elements and you make it very comprehensive, and you actually hold a framework together for managing all of this. Then honestly, it's a climate law just with the name.
That's very much true. But at some point, as NGOs, we needed to strategically discuss, and we kind of made a bit of a compromise, whether we want to keep strong governance features of the law, or we will be pushing for ambition, because the law at some point was sufficiently specific in terms of sectoral targets. So, for example, what different sectors, say transportation, buildings, industry, how they should curb their emissions until 2030. So this was specifically assigned, the percentage was assigned to different ministries as a task until 2030. This we really welcomed because it was sufficiently clear, but the numbers were ridiculous in some cases, like, for example, transportation. That was almost like a joke, because commitment in the sector of transportation was to not increase emission more than by, I think, 25% until 2030. Yeah. Okay. I mean, the other sectoral targets were not as bad, but they were not, definitely for NGOs or for the climate targets in general, you know, Paris Agreement commitments, they were definitely not sufficiently ambitious.
Okay, but so it wasn't really a consistent effort with international commitments.
I mean, they claimed yes, but the data is questionable. They claimed that they were basically meeting the goals, but we felt that the ambition should look completely differently, and also that there is an opportunity to decrease emissions more. But what we, as I said, what we cautiously decided that we will be pushing the ministry more not in the ambition level, but in the governance, to ascertain that we have, as you said, you know, not every climate law is a real climate law. We were calling it a climate law with strong features, and we meant mostly the governance of the whole system.
Yeah, because then targets, you can play with the numbers afterwards, but if you don't have the framework in place, then it's very hard.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a super interesting story, to be honest, how it came from the ministry and then it got into it wanted to be something very like a cooperation between this bottom-up and top-down approach, but then kind of, I don't want to say that it miserably failed.
It did.
Okay.
Well, I mean, and I have to say, I mean, I would very much like to inspire your audience, and I hope that to some extent the Slovak example can still inspire, because I think it's a good story, but we also know where the story needs to be retold or rethought and done differently, because exactly the engagement of different stakeholders is something where Ministry of Environment, I dare to say specifically, to point fingers, failed. And it came back and backfired, because the 2-year story that I started, 2-year path of the climate law in Slovakia, started with good intentions of engagement and, you know, discussions. Then it went into kind of the hard work, where we were in cooperation, luckily, Climate Coalition and partners in cooperation with Ministry of Environment, we were going back and forth with the law. And the ministry at the beginning of this year came up with fairly decent draft, as I said, mostly when it comes to the framework and the governance structure of it. But then sending the baby through the legislative process,
through the fire,
it basically received 700 critical comments, and many of them were coming from ministries that were to implement, that are the main targets of the legislation, so to speak.
Okay.
They are the ones that will bear the commitments. They're the ones that, according to the governance structure, should be diligently checked, reporting. They should, meet that the public should be even able to sue them if they don't meet the targets. So of course, to me, understandably, the ministries, to put it bluntly, freaked out a bit.
Okay.
And said that we don't want this law. And I dare to say that if the show was run differently, if the engagement, explanation, discussions were parallel to the draft of the law, I think it's a very natural feature of a human being, an institution apparently also, that whenever it's something about me but without me, I kind of push it away, and I don't want to have, and I'm very critical of it. And I really do understand that the situation in Slovakia notoriously is not good on cooperation of different ministries, not good on, cross-sectoral cooperation. And this law actually had ambition to change that.
Yeah, to bring all of them together and deal with climate action comprehensively from all of the sectors. And
which
not
is absolutely
just
crucial. In order for us to succeed, is absolutely crucial that we work together. And it actually achieved almost the opposite, that it further, it even more polarized the society around climate issues, I am afraid to say.
Okay. So can you tell us more about the elements of the draft law? The initial baby that went through the fire of Parliament.
And it's still, it's still there, but no one really knows if it's completely burned. The strong features, as we call it, are still there, most of them. But it kind of stopped and never went to the next phase of legislative process, which is the government approval.
Okay.
So in Slovakia, you basically, the particular ministry drafts the law, it goes through a legislative commenting, open also to public. And then after that, they kind of deal with comments, and they try to clear the main comments, but then it needs to go to the government and then to the parliament. So it never made it even to the government yet.
Okay.
Well, the strong features actually are, I think, very similar to what I hear other good pieces of legislation of this type contain. So we were pushing for having very clear commitments, whether it's sectoral targets, how to decrease emissions in particular sectors, or whether it is, for example, the way or the content of the other crucial policies like NECP, National Environment Climate Plans, or low emission strategies. They were also part, as a commitment, part of the climate law. So very clearly determined commitments and very clear ownership of those commitments.
Like institutional responsibilities.
Exactly. Particular ministries, especially, they are the ones that are bearing these tasks. Second was regular reporting and also public reporting of these commitments. Third was kind of a control, independent control by an expert council. So establishing a new body.
An independent advisory body. Right.
Exactly. Advisory body that was, and we paid a lot of attention to how it's created, what are the responsibilities, that it also has some, and down to specifics like that it can, its members are paid so that they actually can deliver job, because there was quite a bit of tasks on the shoulders of this advisory and controlling body, in fact.
Yeah, it's super important for them to have actually dedicated resources, a secretariat.
Exactly. And we made sure that there's no conflict of interest and who appoints them and so on and so forth. So these things were kind of taken care of.
And and also whether they are just a counselor to the government, or if they can also actively hold accountable the government.
Yes, and that was, I mean, they were not the ones that would be kind of evoking those responsibilities, but they had power to report and, also independently initiate process where they would bring to for example, the parliament, that this is what is happening and this is what is not happening. Yeah. So that was
some elements of proactivity in
exactly. So again, clear commitments, clear ways of reporting and checking them, including, open for members of the public. And lastly, we had the also possibility to enforce these through the litigation, public court action. Yeah, if they did not meet the required obligations, there was a possibility to sue. This was quite a novum, I must say, but we still we maintained it through the first part of the legislative process. Then there were a few specifics next to this governance. There were a few specifics like the things that we determined are kind of bottlenecks of a Slovak climate policy, such as data. So we put in, together with Ministry of Environment, that consider this part quite important as well, kind of a mechanism to better, collect data, to monitor them, to make them accessible, and to kind of link them to a good policy making. Yeah.
All right, like enhanced transparency.
Yeah, those are usually quite disconnected things. I mean, we collect data, not sufficiently, but relevant actors don't even know who has which data. And also they're usually not transferred and not really they don't provide a good input for the climate policies. So the data element was present there, and also municipalities. And originally we also had this element of regional planning of the climate action. So kind of strengthening capacities of municipalities, as well as kind of regions to be able to plan decarbonization, to be able to even use European money because absorption rate in Slovakia is very poor. So be able to use the European money for decarbonization, for actions, and to be able down to really design projects and implement projects. So really strengthen capacities from of the bottom action.
It just sounds very amazing, especially this regional planning part. Yeah, just like a lot of work was put into there, and also with the independent advisory body, how you basically regulated that. Super interesting, honestly.
And there was a very good cooperation between civil society and very good. There was okay cooperation with between civil society or the climate organizations and ministry. We were really we had people there that were willing to communicate with us. It wasn't their proactive approach at all, which is, I think, a problem. But at least we were able to kind of really lobby the good things in there. The problem was exactly that the ministry did not understand importance of engagement around such crucial piece of legislation.
Yeah, and this is linked to my next question, whether you also proposed some features about public participation in the draft law.
Well, the features of public participation are there because, as I mentioned, the control and the review mechanism of the targets was to be done publicly. So ministries had some reporting which would be open to public, and they could be screened. And there was also this public litigation, public action, court action that that members of the public could bring if the climate targets were not met. But what was more troublesome, and that can be fatal to this amazing piece of work, is a participation throughout the drafting. And here I really don't mean, and not even primarily do I mean, wider public or NGOs, because we managed to get our way through. But it was, again, NGOs, so our climate coalition, that had, at some point we realized there is a problem and there is opposition to the draft law as created by the Ministry of Environment, coming from ministries, business, you name it. So we started doing this. We started having bilateral and other meetings with different ministries, with union, trade union, with businesses. I mean, I spent many hours, designing different workshops for business and other stakeholders, and having, lobbying or advocacy talks around climate law, something which should be a part of the drafting process and should be managed by Ministry of Environment.
Okay.
NGO people cannot subsidize ministry in this. And maybe it was, if I'm critical for ourselves, maybe we should have been louder and alerting ministry to realize this, that they need to guide this. But the people that were the desk officers that were responsible, nor the minister himself, did not feel that this is the way to go. I mean, they did not know. So in countries like Slovakia, and I dare to say more CEE countries, don't trust that officials will actually know what and how to do that.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pity. That's definitely a pity. Yeah. So we're reaching the dramatic point of the story of the poor law.
Well, we don't know what will happen now with the new government,
Yeah, so actually this is what the next topic on the agenda of the discussion, the elections of September 2023.
Okay.
Okay, take a deep breath.
I mean, it is a disaster. It's really not a very good situation that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
The new government was, I mean, from the point of view of having far right nationalist representative in the government.
The SNS, right?
Yes. To the fact that because of this and because
Slovak National Party, was it?
Exactly.
Yeah, can you tell us who won, how the coalition was formed?
Yeah.
And a bit
okay.
Of,
so you really want this, yes?
Yes.
You really want our nightmare coming true. I mean, I will start
because we also have in Romania a similar party to the SNS that's kind of gaining traction, and we're a little bit afraid of the next year's elections, and that's why, and what will happen to climate ambitions with the new government that's got a far right party in it. So it's super valuable for us to learn from the Slovak example.
And we have a minister from that party. A Minister of Environment is from that party.
Oh my God. Okay.
So, I mean, starting on the positive side, the recent elections also brought progressive parties to the parliament, and mainly Progressive Slovakia, which was not a member of the party, won by, or kind of achieved a good result of 19%. So we have some good allies, really people to talk to a certain NGO health, hopefully, because that's also, I mean, it's a crucial issue now, the safe space of civil society, in order for us to do our good work, but also all the environmental and climate things. I mean, we have allies in the parliament. That's a good thing. They were almost the ones that were, because they were second, the Progressive Slovakia was second, so they were almost the ones that were creating the government coalition if the winning Smer would not be able to, but they were. Smer is basically a retro party. So it was our Prime Minister Fico has been around for four times already. Last time he needed to step down after a murder of a journalist, investigative journalist, and his girlfriend, which was kind of sending links directly to his close political circle. And he's back. I mean, everyone was surprised, but he's back and very strong. I mean, he's back on a very populistic narrative on very populistic topics. And also, I dare to say bluntly that a lot of lies we heard in recent months.
A lot of propaganda.
A lot of propaganda.
Okay.
I mean, Slovakia is one of the countries, EU countries, where hoaxes and kind of a Russian propaganda is extremely strong. So, I mean, we have a massively polarized society, and election results basically showed that. So we have three parties in the government coalition. One is Smer, the winner. The second one is Hlas, which is basically a derivative of Smer. I mean, the leader of Hlas just left Smer when they went down and created his own party, but now they're kind of almost merged back, one would say. And the third one is the Slovak National Party, which is like a zombie. They also did not really exist. I mean, they ranked really low in election polls, you know, few months ago. But the leader of this party, a person whose rhetorics are not really understandable to general public because he speaks in a really this gibberish. But he pulled together political forces that were not linked with anything else. So it's not even a coherent party.
Okay.
So these kind of threesome, and I also need to say that Hlas and Smer were their membership to SD on the European level, the fraction of the European Parliament was terminated, was paused because of kind of their coalition with the right-wing party, and also because of lots of pre-election campaign narratives and things that went into the air. We were hoping that the whatever was being campaigned on before elections will kind of settle down a little bit once they get into power. I must say that their actions are very strong. So one of their first actions was to request or to be proposing changing of the zoning of the national parks and changing of the nature protection regulation, or for example, freeing hunting of bears and wolves. So really nature protection is something that they're strong about. Climate was quite calm and quiet. They're linking it, and I must say rightly so. I mean, it is very closely linked with, you know, the general green transformation, the energy, the efficiency, renewables, you know, all these topics. And of course, having a strong element of a kind of just and socially just transformation. So this is their topics. And so far, at least the narrative that we find in their program on climate is not entirely bad. What is bad that they want to keep in the gas and infrastructure.
All the fossil fuels, all the, yeah.
But I mean, this is our current situation. The climate law is in the program. They want to finish and kind of enact a national climate law. Of course, as you already mentioned very rightly, what kind of climate law will come about from this political situation is a huge question.
Yeah. One question, during election campaign, were they actually campaigning on the law, talking about climate or any other sort? Like, did you expect that they will actually keep the draft law?
No, I actually am very surprised because no one was. Okay, the election campaigns, also the mobilization campaigns coming from the Climate Coalition, from NGOs, as well as other NGOs, was much more on general mobilization, much more on, we want to stay in Slovakia, we need a hope in this country, and so on. We did not go into particulars. We were focusing on first and second term voters and making sure they understand why it is important to become responsible citizens. One thing I forgot, which is really important for NGOs in general, but for climate NGOs as well, of course, and climate agenda, that one of the first actions of this new government is to be, attacking NGOs. And we've been named also before elections foreign agents, and they're trying to push away the good guys that are providing services from the political NGOs that are watchdogging and so that's really big. And at the moment they are
a bit of a witch hunt.
Exactly, completely. It's Fico is really strongly inspired by Orban's ways. And one of the first things policies they introduce is to cut down on the 2% tax assignation, which for many NGOs is a significant income.
Yeah, that's a blow. Yeah. So,
no, but just quickly back to your question, the climate law was not part of the campaign, and that's why we're slightly surprised that it made its way to the program, because there's not even like a clear commitment coming from the EU that member states needs to have national climate.
Domestic national, yeah, but at the same time it's a crucial instrument that complements the EU legislation in the sense, the governance regulation, the EU climate law, and it's much needed.
Look, if you have a huge package like Fit for 55 that will need to be transposed, otherwise infringements and money not coming in, so that's sufficient stick to evoke the good carrot. And I think the reward in a good national legislation that pulls sources and resources together and coordinates this action, I think I'm a strong believer in national climate laws. I think there is no fail in it, but it needs to have at least some of the features that make it.
Yeah, exactly. So now I think that we're reaching kind of the end of the discussion, and I would like to have kind of like this open questions to reflect about. The first one is, how do you think we could increase the political sustainability of climate policies and laws over changing cabinets? Because right now, I guess Slovakia, it's a lucky case that in the new governing program, the draft climate law is still a thing. But what happens if there's other shifts and crises that will make projects burn into the fire of the process?
Firstly, I will just reflect on share with you my fear that it's in the program, but it can be so watered down that it will be just a tick in the box. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not really, I would not yet even call it a success. Let's celebrate small victories. So yes, but it's there.
Given the circumstances.
Exactly. I think that, and what Climate Coalition also did, even though we were in mobilization, as I said, focusing on more general mobilization, we still did put in kind of demands for political parties. And one of our members was leading this communication towards campaigning political parties. And was questioning them on our key program priorities and seeking how they're reflected in their program priorities. Yeah. So I think this is very important for us as civil society to be also very consistent. Have clear asks at the very beginning of the mandate, follow them through the mandate of that government or the political group that's leading, and then prepare a countdown after the end of the period before elections. I think it takes quite a bit of work and consistency, and with NGOs sometimes also changing capacities and all that. I think it's really important. I think we should be like calling for if it still makes sense, calling for the same things and holding them accountable, pushing them to promise and then holding them accountable to the promises. That's one thing. And second thing, there are two more things that are becoming very clear for us, especially under given political circumstances. We need to be building very strong base of allies. So networking across everyone, really strategically choosing, and I said it widely, but what I meant is also strategically choosing the partnerships. So I mentioned already, trade unions, if they're strong and they're at least somewhat on our side, choosing good businesses that we could kind of push the government for investments that make sense, choosing, media that we can, provide them with information and back and forth. Church, other sectors of society, like those that have strong voice. Climate NGOs need to allocate capacities to do this strategic networking. And hand in hand with that, we need to start talking simple language. I mentioned gibberish being the language of one of our party leaders, but oftentimes we have these RRF and PAs and this and that, and no one
all the acronyms. Oh my God.
Yeah, and also just like speak the language that resonate with people. It's not so much about climate law for them. It's really for them to keep jobs that make sense, are healthy, bring them, we can speak that language if we make an effort, and speak stories, portray. We had this part of the campaign where we were talking to farmers and teachers and people from all sorts of areas of life, where they said, I do this and climate law fits like this into my life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's why I am for the strong climate law. And things like this, I think we should allocate capacities to do more and more.
Yeah. That's super inspiring, to be honest. Yeah. So do you have any other recommendations for CEE countries like Romania or like other countries who are in the middle of drafting a law?
Yes, I do. And not only for the climate law, I'm sorry, I'll be a bit broader still, because it's not only
about the climate law is just one piece in the bigger puzzle, right?
Exactly. I think what you're doing with this podcast and just reaching out to bring maybe inspiring stories in some ways, also stories where there is a lesson to learn, maybe not only positive, but like just I think that
we all learn from mistakes, right?
Exactly. I think we should learn ideally from mistakes of those that someone else made, if we're smart enough. So really, we have very similar situation and circumstances in our lives as CEE group. So let's learn from each other more. Let's connect more. But also, because we're in this amazing EU family, there are great networks such as Can Europe, such as EEB, such as, all these great, strong environmental networks. They proved to be very useful to inspire parts of the legislation, parts of the climate law, for example. I consulted with a lot of my partners from European Climate Foundation and so on. So again, it's the same thing, only spreading wider. I would say that, as I was saying, create strategic partnerships on national level, create it on the regional level, and create it on the EU level. And all of them really, it's a lot of work, by the way, and a lot of strategic thinking, but at the same time, all of them really can fit in our work very nicely and inspire it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I couldn't agree more, to be honest. Yeah, and also thanks to these kind of networks, we got the chance to sit here for 1 hour and talk about climate
It's
governance.
already an hour, see?
I guess, yeah, it's already an hour. Yeah, and honestly, we could go on and on and on.
Exactly.
Because it's been such an insightful and inspiring conversation, despite all the struggles associated with it, with the Slovak context. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for being with us today and for this wonderful discussion.
Great pleasure. And I'm really holding fingers crossed for Romanian national climate law. I believe it can actually happen even faster. I mean, Estonians are progressing very fast.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Exactly. Thank you so much, Dana.